Hey, what's up guys, Riff here. So it looks like Ubisoft is in trouble once again. They have been caught in another lie involving Assassin's Creed Shadows' authenticity and how they represent history. Now, it has been a tough year for Ubisoft. The two AAA titles they're working on have been very negatively received by potential players. You can see the first Slop Festival, Star Wars Outlaws. This has been hit with a lot of negative feedback from the community, the gameplay looking like something that resembles a PS2 release, and in a desperate attempt to get some favor back, it looks like Ubisoft has been caught bribing essentially a bunch of YouTubers with trips to places like Disneyland in exchange for positive reviews of this game. The other slop that's coming out with Ubisoft is of course Assassin's Creed Shadows, and this is what we're going to talk about for the remainder of this video. So you might be aware that for months, a lot of the people on the team over at Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed Shadows have promoted this game largely on its main protagonist, or one of the two main protagonists, Yasuke, who they claim is the first black samurai in Japanese history, which is a very contested label, by the way. And developers have said in months past that this game faithfully depicts real historical figures, and that they want to make sure this game is undiluted as possible and as close to reality and expectations as possible. But obviously, the reaction, especially from Japanese gamers, has been really negative. They are not happy with this attempt by Ubisoft to rewrite their history for whatever agenda they have. Now, a lot of people are looking at this individual, Thomas Lockley, and they believe that is where all this misinformation is stemming from, but we'll get back to him in just a second. So back in late July, responding to those criticisms, Assassin's Creed would release an official statement, and curiously, they would say, in complete contradiction to previous statements, they would say their intention has never been to present any of their games as factual representation of history or historical characters. A lot of people are calling out the hypocrisy of that based on the previous statements I just showed you. Now you might be getting some kind of a whiplash here because we're going at this whole thing again. So 2 days ago, it was presented by the lead producer of this game that Assassin's Creed Shadows wants to commit to being as authentic as possible in their attempts to appeal to a global audience. Now, this is pretty crazy. You can see the interview was from 3 days ago, and the lead producer would go on to leave some pretty interesting quotes. Number one, they would discuss some of the architecture and designs that they're hoping they can start getting right, because it seems that they went into this without a very good understanding of what Japanese culture and architecture and things like that look like. So now they're scrambling because they've been caught by many people making inaccurate versions of Japanese architecture, including using Chinese architecture and other things to represent feudal Japan. It's a clear mistake and a lack of knowledge on their behalf. But this is the really interesting quote we're going to look at for a second. Here is the lead producer saying, "Obviously, when we make a game, we are trying to appeal to a global audience. Since we are making a game in Japan, we do hope to appeal to more Japanese players, so it is very important that we try to be as authentic as possible. We come from a humble position of, we don't know anything and we need to learn everything from scratch. We are making sure we respect things because that is something very important to Japanese people, as it is in many other countries. When you come in, you don't want to come in as if you know everything. We want to build something that when they see it, they'll play it and they'll recognize their own country." This is an outrageous statement, another contradiction, another right turn on their approach to historical accuracy. They're now saying they want it to be as close as possible to respect the global audience, but mainly Japanese gamers. Why do you think they're doing that? It's of course damage control. This is a desperate plea to Japanese gamers. So they're trying to say basically, please play our game, we'll try to get it historically accurate. However, the entire foundation of this game is based on a highly contested claim that Yasuke is a samurai. And it appears we know the main source for this claim, and that's what we're going to talk about next. So there has already been one example, or at least a couple examples, of government action being focused in on this game and everything it's trying to claim. But we have another report of the Japanese government exposing a lie of the collaborator, as many are calling, Thomas Lockley. Now, who is Thomas Lockley? Well, he is the boy who cried samurai. He is the real historical fixture in this whole situation. His book right here, this Slop Fiesta, is 400 pages of just ridiculous easily debunk claims about Japanese history, primarily claims about Yasuke. And not only has the government paid attention to some of those claims, they're also paying attention to other claims. But here's another thing that a lot of people have been wondering. Is Thomas Lockley actually connected to Ubisoft and Assassin's Creed Shadows? And it seems like the answer is undoubtedly yes. So I don't know if this was something I overlooked or other people overlooked or was just recently discovered, but I saw this in the That Park Place article that is really telling. So back in, I believe, May of this year, Lockley collaborated with Ubisoft on Assassin's Creed Shadows for an episode of the company's Echoes of History podcast titled Yasuke, the First African Samurai podcast. That's pretty clear that they are paying attention, not just paying attention, actually collaborating with Thomas Lockley. And you can see they describe everything that is reminiscent of the passages of his book. And they make it clear, too, during the podcast that Echoes of History is a Ubisoft broadcast. So that is a clear connection between the podcast and Ubisoft, and also this podcast with Lockley, obviously because he collaborated with them. And really, it seems like this was the same point a lot of this has been centered around to. It's Thomas Lockley trying to sell his book. You can see they support all of the narratives, and the host of the podcast ends the segment by telling people to go find more about this notorious yet mysterious figure from Japanese history by buying this book that Lockley has produced. It is about selling books. I think that has been the primary motivation, the vandalization of Wikipedia pages by Lockley to basically self-insert his own book as a source to claims that Lockley or that Yasuke was a samurai. And now he's going around on tours here, going on podcasts, trying to sell his book. In fact, in other now deleted interviews with Lockley, he said that this whole promotion of Assassin's Creed Shadows has increased his book sales. That's what this is at the end of the day. This is an attempt to get more sales with his book, and I think it's very obvious. And now there is another effort by the Japanese government to look into the false claims made by Lockley. We've seen the Japanese government go after some of his claims about Yasuke, but there's also a second claim that a lot of people have been mocking. It's something I mentioned in a previous video, but essentially Lockley claims that there was this historical figure after Yasuke, a black man who he just randomly decided was Yasuke's descendant. And that claim has been challenged by the prefecture where he claims the relevant information exists. They go on to say he might not even understand the word that he was describing that he uses as proof that it was a black man they were describing. What he was looking at was a word that doesn't necessarily even paint the person as a black man. So this could have just been a random Japanese person, but because he thought that they were black based on this language in the text, he now believes that's the descendant of Yasuke, which is also interesting, right? Like, oh, there's another black person in Japanese history. It must be the descendant of Yasuke. It's a very touchy kind of thing to say. But anyways, I think that's really going to conclude it for this video. Another round of Ubisoft controversy. They can't seem to get their narrative straight when it comes to how they historically portray Assassin's Creed Shadows and the characters contained within it and their historical counterparts. But yeah, that's not too surprising. But for now, that's going to do it for this video. I hope you guys enjoyed. As always, feel free to share your thoughts about today's topics in the comment section down below. And I'll see you guys next time.